Hi, my name is Cecilia Pounard, and welcome to this episode of Brave New Women. All around the world, there are amazing, ordinary women doing extraordinary things. Brave New Women is about giving those women a platform and a voice, and it's about changing the way that women are perceived. And it's a way of inspiring all of us to do the things that we've always wanted to do. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the podcast Ella Etienne-Denoy. And Ella, like me, is Franco-Australian. There probably aren't very many of us. And she's also the CEO of a company called Green Soluce. So Ella, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Cecilia. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Ella, the first question I wanted to ask you is, what is Green Soluce?
Okay, right. So Green Soluce, we're a company, a consulting company of a new kind, I'd say. First of all, because we mix what people would probably have in mind as traditional consulting with a tech approach to projects, and we're dedicated to the real estate and urban sector. So we work on real estate, real assets, buildings, districts. We work on cities. And our job is to facilitate and accelerate the transition towards increased sustainability, but also increased inclusion and increased resilience in real estate and cities. So basically sustainability to anything linked to the built environment. That's what we do. And we're a team of over 20 people based in Paris, and we work all across France, Europe, and more internationally.
Mm-hmm. And so when you say that you work on inclusion and you work on sustainability, what are you actually doing? I mean, what does every day look like? What does that mean?
Yeah, so we have 4 hubs of expertise. Our first hub is advisory. So we help private and public organisations along the real estate and urban value chain. So I'm talking about local urban authorities, but also real estate developers, investors, and companies which occupy buildings and build spaces. And we, my team carries out projects on the ground. So basically, there's a building project or a development project of on a district. We can work on the sustainability strategy for that building or district operation. And a sustainability strategy can relate to energy, topics like energy efficiency, but also carbon footprint, biodiversity, use and optimized use of resources. We're currently in the sustainability ecosystem. A big topic is the circular economy. How do we move from a linear, production, consumption, and waste to a more circular approach to resources? Those are topics that we can tackle technically on the ground when it comes to physical operations. But we also tackle those topics at a more corporate level. So when private and public organizations, want to set out a macro strategy, what does that look like? How do you go about setting targets? What are the key performance indicators, KPIs? How are you going to define them? So we work both at a physical asset level as well as a corporate level, and that means that we know what it means to define a carbon strategy, for instance, but also actually implement it on the ground and to have actionable results. We also work on the learning side. What does that mean? Basically, there's a big need for raising awareness. And also training professionals with regards to the topics that we work on at Green Soluce. There's a lot of where, you can read a lot about energy, carbon, biodiversity, circular economy in the media. There's a lot of talk with regards to CSR strategies, but do professionals actually really know what's behind those terms? And today it's and increasingly those topics are no longer just the topics of experts, but we need all people all employees in big companies and across the ecosystem to be really part of that dynamic. And that basically means raising awareness and training professionals. And with my team, we developed digital learning environment. So 100% digital, to be able to raise awareness and train not only 10 or 20 people here and there, as you'd see with traditional training, but hundreds and thousands of professionals on those key corporate social responsibility and sustainability topics. That's our second hub of expertise, so advisory learning. Our third hub of expertise is dedicated to sustainable finance for real assets, for real estate. So what does that mean? There's a big trend in the financial industry, in the banking sector, with regards to green finance. And one of the tangible ways to apply green finance is to apply financial tools to real estate and infrastructure. And that's a key topic that we look at within my team. We help financial investors and key financial players to define what we call SRI strategies, socially responsible investment strategies. We work on tools such as green bonds, social bonds, sustainable bonds when they are applied to real estate projects, for instance. So those are topics that we look at in the green finance environment, because there's the sustainability transition in my sectors will not be able to happen if we don't have financial players on board, and that's that's where the money is, and we need those funds to be redirected to sustainable projects and sustainable project owners, and that's a really key important trend currently, and I'm working very closely with a lot of partners on that specific green finance topic. And our fourth hub of expertise is a content hub, where we work on best practice sharing. So it's one thing for organizations to know that they are having a positive impact with regards to their activities and the projects that they develop. It's another thing to actually getting the word out and setting setting a standard, and more and more best practice sharing is needed. There's a risk also at the moment. There's a big there's a lot of talk around the green transition and sustainability, but that also means that there's a risk of increased greenwashing, and certain solutions may be more relevant than others. And so, understanding what works and what doesn't is also key, especially when you're looking at important assets such as real estate and infrastructure. And so we work on communication action plans, on impactful communication that's in line with positive impact. And we also developed an initiative called Urban Chronicles, which is a digital platform dedicated to sharing best practices and concrete solutions with regards to more sustainable, more inclusive, and more resilient cities. So that's to give you an idea of the panel of what we do. So it's pretty broad, but at the same time, as we're dedicated to making that happen, making the transition happen for real estate, for cities, and it makes sense, and there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do there, so we're pretty active on that front.
Wow. Wow. I mean, there's a lot in that. But what I'm hearing is that what you're doing is actually very practical and very much on the ground with people who are building things, building assets, building buildings, and people who are financing that, and with the professionals, all the whole professional circle around that. So it's actually right there where the impact is happening.
Absolutely, and it's all about getting all those stakeholders, Cecilia, together. And it's about them getting around the table and also speaking the same language, because when you're carrying out sustainability projects with regards to real estate and the cities of tomorrow, you're experimenting things as well. So there's a bit of risk taking there. You're anticipating what cities are going to look like in 2030, 2050. What does it mean to be carbon neutral? Those topics. So there are many stakeholders to convince, to get on board, to get them around the table, to speak the same language, because these are profiles who are some are financial specialists, others are architects, a lot of engineers, and these are professionals who are used to working in their area of expertise, not necessarily in a transversal, pluridisciplinary approach. And so that's a big challenge, because they often
don't have the same vocabulary.
They don't have the same vocabulary, and it's a bit like switching from French to English, getting Australians and French people around the table. There's a bit of intercultural management skill there that I transpose in a certain sense to all these different profiles of professionals. So it's getting everyone to speak a common language, and that's probably the biggest challenge.
Ella, I'd like to hear more about Green Soluce, but before that, I'd like to just go back a bit and hear more about you. So can you just tell me more about your background, where you grew up, what you studied, who your parents are?
Right. So I was born in Paris. I'm French through my dad. So dad's French, born and raised in Paris, and mum's from Sydney.
Where is she from in Sydney?
She grew up in Chatswood.
And
right. Went to school at Abbotsleigh.
You're joking.
No. She's a
so did I.
Girl. Oh, right. Okay. Oh, wow. Well, that is funny. The world's very small. Yeah, she went to school. She went to school at Abbotsleigh, then at Women's College at Sydney University.
Wow. Okay.
And then met my dad. Met my dad when he was on an internship in Sydney. And then 35 years later, they're still together. And one extra piece of information that's key is that my dad's a diplomat. So he's a French diplomat. So on top of being French and Australian, I was let's say in the diplomatic sphere. I grew up in the French diplomacy, and so that basically meant every 3 years going on a posting and coming back to Paris. So we lived in Belgium, in Canberra. Dad was on a posting in Australia, in Germany, well, and then he went on to New Zealand, Kazakhstan, so different countries there. And I speak French and English through mum and dad, but also German, because I was.
You lived there for 3 years?
Yes, I lived there for 3.5 years and went to a German high school. I really learned German with the Germans from year 6 to year 9. So Germany's my third country. I'd probably say adoptive country.
Wow.
So very international background, and with two one foot in in Paris and in France, and 1 foot in Australia, because I've been going back to Sydney every year at Christmas. This is probably this is actually the upcoming Christmas is the first time we're not spending Christmas in Sydney.
Wow. Gosh.
So, yeah. So that's going to be a big change. So we're going to have a cold, cool Christmas. But we hope that we'll be able to fly into to Sydney without having to stay in
quarantine.
They put you in. They ask you to stay in a hotel for 14 days. So if you're going to Sydney for a 3-week holiday and you spend 2 weeks in a hotel, that's probably not the best. So we'll delay the trip to sometime later next year.
Okay. And what was it like moving every 3 years? I mean, how did you live that as a child?
Well, moving every 3 years is a challenge. I think you learn how to adapt very quickly. I mean, that's something that I definitely learned through changing school systems. Not only changing schools, but changing school systems.
Yeah.
I've gone through 4 to 5 different school systems,
wow.
which was great, because if today people ask me, what's the best, how would you design a school? It would be a mix between the French system, the Australian system, the German system, and they've all got strengths and weaknesses. So it's a combination of all of that. And I think one of the things that Mum and Dad did really well was that we always, after a posting abroad, we'd always come back to Paris. So Paris was a very strong home base, and spending every Christmas 4 to 5 weeks, whatever, in Sydney at Christmas time was also a big plus. So we in France and Germany, you only get 2 weeks holiday at Christmas time, but Mum and Dad would say we'd go for a month, and that was non-negotiable with the schools. And so that was also a way to keep the Aussie connection alive and very present in my life and my sister's life as well. So that was very important, and that built our French Australian bicultural identity.
Yeah, because I mean, I struggle with that too, because as you say, there's only 2 weeks at Christmas. And so
how do you go about that? Yeah.
How do you go about that? And either you lose your summer holidays by going to Australia in the winter, or you lose or you just go for 2 weeks, and it's it's a long way to go for 2 weeks.
Or you bend the rules a little bit.
Or you bend the rules a bit.
Which is and you say, well, this is also part of my kids' education.
Yeah.
And Mum and Dad would do that really well. Like they'd write to the director explaining to the school, explaining what this means. And this is also one of the reasons why we were able to keep up English.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also a challenge for international kids, binational children, to be able to master both languages in the same way, at the same level. And I think that's key. You don't want to end up speaking either tongue as a foreigner, and that's something that I think Mum and Dad did really well. So I'm pleased that they didn't necessarily go by the rule book exactly in that sense. That was good.
Well, that might be a lesson for us. You might start making some rules,
and just getting people to understand what it means, because it's not the same dynamic as a monocultural. What my mum and dad call monocultural family life. If you've got family 18,000 kilometers away, you're not going to go for 2 weeks with 10 hours jet lag. So you need to be able to get organized a little differently.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's brilliant. So then you went to schools in all sorts of different countries. And then you studied in France, did you? Did your
Yes, we came back to France when I was in year 10, which is a seconde. Came back to Paris. Then I chose to go for the French system of the classe préparatoire. I was selected to attend the classe préparatoire at Henri IV in Paris, and then went for the,
which is for the English speakers. Henri IV is probably the top class préparatoire in France.
Yep. In my section, it was number one. Number one nationally, and still is actually. So it's a very challenging. Very challenging 2 years, but very very stimulating intellectually. So that was great. I was hesitating between going to Cambridge, to be honest, in the UK and Henri IV, and I thought, business was something that I wanted to get into fairly quickly, and the Grande École system seemed to be a good way to do that. So I sat the competitive exam, which we call concours in France. Was selected to go to ESSEC after those 2 years. And while at ESSEC, I did probably two things that were a bit distinctive. I went to Singapore. The school has a campus in Singapore because I wanted to have a look at business in Asia and get a better understanding of what's happening in Asia. And that was also linked to, being Australian, you tend to look also towards Asia. So that was something that that was really interesting, and I really enjoyed that. And I also carried out a double degree with the University of Mannheim in Germany. And my focus during those years at business school was strategy, innovation management, and sustainability. And funnily enough, when after graduation, I thought I was going to start working for a large company in Germany, because I'd carried out, double degree with Germany. It was important for me to get that recognition in a certain sense, because as I'd been to school in Germany during high school and didn't go right till the end. I thought, well, I want to go back to Germany and carry out a master thesis and get a German diploma. So that was really good. And then I thought I'd probably
so it sounds like being you felt like you needed validation of the fact that that Germany was an important part of you.
Exactly. That was a way to sanction in a certain sense.
Your Germanness.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, unless you don't in your everyday, even professional life, you don't necessarily talk about your high school years, but they were pretty they were key. Yeah, they were very formative, and they were key for me. Because going to a German high school, either you learn the language and you're able to follow, to continue, or you'd probably end up in a boarding school somewhere in France to keep it up. So those were the two options. And Mum and Dad were I remember them saying to me, this is going to be quite a challenge. So we'll see how it goes. And it was a great experience, very, very challenging. Some people learn what it's like to put their head down, so to speak, when they get to university. In my case, it started in year 6, learning a completely foreign language. But no, that was definitely important for me to go back to Germany, get a degree, and I really enjoyed the time in Germany. So that was great. So much so that I thought that I was going to start working in Germany, and ended up coming back to Paris for a short period of time. And I got to one of the founders of Green Soluce approached me. I knew him through a different type of network. We started working on the project together, and then at the end he said, "Do you really want to go back to Germany? Maybe we could do this carry this out together. And I thought, okay, well, I wasn't thinking of becoming an entrepreneur. My dad's a diplomat, and when you're at ESSEC, a more natural perspective is large corporations. And I thought, this is interesting, and I'd like to give it a go. Something completely different, and I definitely wanted to work in the sustainability field, and so I went for it. And today we're doing pretty well. We've got a very large client base, strong growth. As I mentioned, a team of 20 people. And at 32, when you head over 20 people, it's a pretty cool experience, very challenging, and you've got ups and downs in the entrepreneurial way, but it is very rewarding and very exciting, and I enjoy what I do. So that's really great.
Just where did the sustainability come from? Where did that interest come from?
I think I was when in those years at business school, having grown up in the diplomatic field. So there's this a notion of public service, which is pretty strong, and which is definitely part of my identity. And in those years at business school, I was like, okay, well, working for a private corporation is definitely interesting, but how can I combine working in the private sector with this very strong, public service, general interest perspective that I was basically born into. That's a very strong aspect, and seeing my dad at work and how he would set up partnerships with private companies, and an ambassador has to carry out economic diplomacy as well. Well, the private sector is a good way also to have a positive impact. And sustainability is definitely a growing field, and with all the the issues that we're going to have to face, that we're already facing, but that we're going to have to face increasingly in the years to come. I thought that would be an interesting way to combine this attraction for the private sector together with a general interest public service perspective.
So you felt like you really wanted to be contributing something meaningful.
Oh yes, I definitely wanted to contribute something meaningful and have a positive impact. That was definitely key in what I wanted to spend my time
achieve.
To achieve. Because we do spend. When I work, we all work long hours every day. And you'd want your work to mean something and to have an impact, and obviously if you can find something that you find interesting that has a positive impact on society, that's probably the best combination that anyone could wish for. So for me, that was a good way to do that.
Couple of questions. How did you become CEO, and what's it like being CEO?
Okay, so how did I become CEO? Well, Green Soluce has we have a board of investors. So I'm one of the partners, but there are three other partners, and among which the very first founding partner, and then two other business angels. Very quickly in the entrepreneurial project, I started defining a vision. That's big. That's a big word, in corporate management, we talk about visions, missions, values, and those words only make sense when they actually have a concrete translation. But a real positioning for the company around this approach that that being dedicated to a sector and considering the needs of our different clients, we needed to be structured around these 4 hubs: advisory, learning, sustainable finance, and content. And so I basically, pitched that and repitched that and insisted. And I was also the one in the company that was the direct link to our clients. So I listened a lot and basically took the weak signals in the market and turned those into competitive advantages for us. So that was, and that's what one requires of a CEO. And then at one point, I took ownership of that of that part of the business, and basically convinced the different partners that it was time for me to really head that to head the company.
To head the company.
Yep. So that was how it happened. Actually, quite naturally, but with a certain. You also need to want to be the leader. Not everyone. Not everyone would necessarily want to. Because being the CEO of a growing entrepreneurial company means also taking the risk. So it's a real personal commitment. It's not the same as in maybe in corporate companies where you're an employee. So even if you're a CEO of a large company, you don't actually have that personal risk and commitment that you'd have when it's your money that's in the company. You're taking the risk. Financial partners are betting on the company, but they're also betting on you. So it's a whole different dimension there. So you probably need to have to really have a keenness for that part as well. If you're completely risk averse, there's no point being an entrepreneur.
Okay.
If you don't like risk, it's better remaining in a large company as
a salaried employee.
As a salaried employee, which is different. Probably more comfortable. But yeah, a different. It's a different type of positioning. Yeah.
And do you find that risk? Do you find it motivating? Do you find it scary? Do you find it terrifying? Do you find it you've got used to it? What's your feelings around that risk?
It's probably all of that at the same time. So there are times where where risk taking is scary, and probably the worst, what keeps entrepreneurial CEOs at night. And I think my other founders and CEOs in my entrepreneurial ecosystem, because I talk to a lot of founders and we have mentors, and they'd probably say what keeps us all up at night is cash. Do we have enough cash on our bank accounts to pay employees? Are we going to run out of cash? That's probably the scary part, because you've got a lot. You've got a lot resting on your shoulders when you have to pay 20 salaries of highly qualified people.
Wow.
When people say, I had a team of 20 people, I'm like, okay, do you head the team of 20 people? Are you responsible for their salaries as well? That's also, so my job is to make sure that, the company has the best positioning in the market, that, our strategy generates sufficient business for, to be able to pay all the charges, salaries and all the rest. I mean, that's only part of what a company such as mine needs to be able to cover. So it's all, there is the scary part, but at the same time, it's exhilarating. I grew up, and I think I really have to thank my parents for that. They always said to me that I could do whatever I wanted to do, as long as you put in the work. So that's a very Anglo-Saxon approach, probably to seeing things. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of sweat. Success doesn't come, isn't.
It's not easy.
No, it's not easy, and it's not just because when people say, "Wow, they tend to focus on the on all the positive aspects, but one must also know that there's a road. It's all about the the trip to get there more than the destination. It's the whole process. If you're only focused on the destination, that it's going to be tricky, because you need to want to get up every morning and to go and fight for your company out there. So it's I think that's key. And what I love about it is also the freedom. I think that's great. To be able to have an idea and see it implemented. And that's extremely rewarding.
Wow.
Doesn't work every time, but we try and make it work. So so a lot of work, courage, and leadership.
Wow.
Those are three key ingredients, and grit. I think grit. That's something maybe also to emphasize. You need a lot of grit when you're an entrepreneur. That's
you just stick with it.
Yeah, resilience. You fall down, you have to get up. That's and you get up for your company, get up for your team. So that's really, really important. And it was funny, actually, because during the COVID confinement period, one of my team members said, "Ella, it was so great. That you every Monday morning we have a team meeting." And I would make it add a principle that every Monday morning I would bring all my energy to the Visio conference to get my team motivated week after week in, week out. And at the end of when we got out of that phase where now we're alternating between the office and home, they said to me, that energy that you gave us also, was a key contributing factor to our great team dynamics and the fact that our business kept on going. So that was really important as well, and that's also part of leadership.
What are in Green Soluce, going back to the company, what are some of the things that you're most proud of, and some of the things that are making the most difference? What's actually making a difference to sustainability and to inclusion? What do you do? Are there any particular projects that you've done where you think, okay, well, that now, if we do that, that is really going to make a difference?
Right. Well, there is one project, Cecilia, that I that I'm very proud of. I mean, I think this project is pretty emblematic of our approach to projects. Is one that we are carrying out for the French Social Security, and we were selected by the French government to carry it out. So it's a very big project. Just to give your audience an idea of what the French Social Security looks like in terms of as an organisation. It's an institution that accounts for 150,000 employees all across France. 14 levels of hierarchy within the organisation.
Wow.
Over 6 million square meters of real estate.
Wow. All
across France. And this is a project that I designed, from scratch, with the energy and green transition in mind and the targets of the French government. And there was a call, a tender that was sent out organised by the French government, requesting projects that would have a major impact for the national green transition. And then I thought of the Social Security, which was already one of my clients, and thinking of how to get how to create a strong mobilization around sustainability, because one of the key pain points for sustainability is getting people really interested in the topic. I mean, people understand that there's climate change, that we need to act more sustainably, but do people really care in their day-to-day life? Is another ball game. Are we really willing and ready to change our way of life? That's another question, and it's not necessarily politically correct to say so, but that's a real making sustainability sexy, interesting, economically attractive. What are the business opportunities?
I see that you've got people who, when people know intellectually, yes, we need to do something about that. But it seems to me that there's a long path between saying, okay, we'll need to do something about that. But actually, that's going to mean that today I need to change this and this and this and this and this. And my feeling is that it's that path that we haven't traveled yet. People are changing little bits. I mean, I speak for myself. I change little things, but I don't change things fundamentally in the way that I'm living. So I think that perhaps that's what you're talking about. Yes,
absolutely. It's that discrepancy between saying, yes, it's important, and I'm willing to change as an individual, as a citizen, as an organization, despite the fact that an effort, is required. It might not be comfortable. I might need to anticipate extra investment. Short term, but in the long term, it's going to be rewarding. All of those things were in my mind at that time and for this tender. And then I thought of our client, the Social Security, and then I thought, well, this is a national tender, and what are the buildings that all French citizens know, and what are the buildings that we as citizens relate to? And if you look closely in France, whether you live in a small town or in Paris or even in a village in some areas in France, all French citizens would know, the train station, the Gare SNCF. Everyone knows the Gare SNCF. Everyone knows the music in the Gare SNCF. There's a little jingle. There's a little jingle. There's an intimate relationship between any French citizen and the train station, wherever we are in France. We've got that same relationship with the post office. We've got that same relationship with our mairie, with the
town halls.
With the town halls across France, and we've got that intimate relationship with the buildings of the Social Security, with the buildings of the CAF. So that's something that we don't necessarily have in Australia, but les caisses d'allocation familiale.
But it's basically money that's paid out to families that aren't well off. Yeah.
Exactly. So a kind of extension of Medicare, Medicaid, but for families, and it's an extra social benefit that the French government that we have in France. And so I thought, that's a building that we have an intimate relationship to. So maybe we can start with that. And if the Social Security, if we designed a program that would tackle the energy and sustainability transition for the 6.5 million square meters of the Social Security, all those agents in the institution are potential ambassadors as citizens. And so that was the key idea behind that project. And so we designed a major, it's a huge project around raising awareness with regards to energy and carbon, and also creating synergies between the institution and the entrepreneurial sphere of innovation, startups, labs, all those companies which provide innovative solutions with regards to sustainability. And so my idea was raising awareness within the institution and getting that institution into an ecosystem which is not its natural ecosystem, and getting and tying closer links. And so that's a program that's currently ongoing.
So concretely, how does that play out?
So we've set up so very concretely, we've set up a digital, a very vast digital program with regards to raising awareness and on energy and sustainability. So basically,
so this is for all the people in the social security.
Yes,
the idea is that they will be trained.
They will be trained. They will be trained on a certain number of topics, and we've got a minimum target of 6,000 people. So 150,000 is it's a lot. Very wide. It's a very wide audience, so it's good to have a kind of intermediate target. And so 6,000 is already pretty good. And if those 6,000 are convinced, they're then ambassadors for the for the rest of the institution. So these people are trained through.
And what are they trained on exactly?
So that there are two types of modules. With regards to energy efficiency and climate change adaptation, so basically energy and carbon, and there are specific modules for all types of managers within the institution, and then more specifically for the technical employees that would be managing real estate, that would be in charge of setting and following target achievement. So we've got basically two audiences. One more management, general management within the institution, and then a more technical expert audience. And so that training program is both digital and also through a certain number of workshops that we carry out throughout France. With COVID, it's more and more digital. We're trying to keep those physical workshops organized and going. So that's a challenge that we're having currently. But the institution is very much involved. So that's great, and we've got great momentum within the social security. So that's very positive. So that's one aspect, and then the second aspect is actually working on the buildings and preparing for what we call POCs, which are proof of concepts. So through experimentation, understanding what solutions work well for which type of building across which type of regions, because in France we've got different types of climates. So it's not the same thing working on a building in Paris that's maybe a building from the 19th century and working on a building that was built in the 1990s in the south of France. So also working according to the asset classes and the different situations. And we've also got, as part of this second more technical asset linked part of the project, we're organising a major event in January between the institution and innovators and innovative solution providers, so startups, labs, and other companies, where we'll be getting the institution and these companies together during a 1-week event, where we'll be having digital workshops, digital conferences, as well as also physical meetups. So that's something that we're working on, and that's a major highlight of our program that we're also going to be opening up to other public institutions and more broadly to the public sector, because they're all state state-owned or public companies that could also benefit from the feedback of our program, and so they will also be invited, as well as the different French ministries and other public entities. So we're making it the meetup between the social security and the innovative solution providers, but more broadly, it's a meetup between the public sector and those
and the private sector
providers and the private sector. So it's a new way also of getting two different worlds together. So
and it's what's interesting about that, I find it absolutely fabulous that the French government is working with Green Soluce to try and make the social security buildings and employees green. I think that is a huge achievement. Huge achievement.
Well, I'll have to debrief you at the end of the program, Cecilia. But we're working hard towards that goal. It's a very exciting project and a pretty cool one as well. So we were really pleased to, and it doesn't cost. That's also an interesting point. It's funded through a specific type of program through companies that are considered. I have to choose my words carefully here, but through a kind of through a funding scheme where energy providers are the ones also funding the program. So it's it's not linked to any state money. So that's also interesting because, as we know, state funding,
taxes in state funding is rare.
State funding is rare and difficult. So it's also we've also got a financial mechanism here that works well to be able to fund these this program that's at the intersection of raising awareness, training, and working on the ground at asset level.
And so it sounds to me like that if that works for the Social Security, that can then be something that can be rolled out across all state institutions in France, which is huge.
Absolutely,
that is huge,
and that's the aim. And I've actually got a conversation going at the moment with the Ministry of Finance, which is the biggest administration in France. It also has 150,000 employees and a lot of real estate. So big impact there. And the great thing about these types of programs is that they give meaning as well to the people who work in those institutions.
Absolutely.
That they enable for any actually large corporation, whether it's a private or a public organization, you can really create a sense of meaning. You can mobilize and federate employees around sustainability, and we, that's also the aim behind this type of program. When your organization's committed to achieving key results, you also want to contribute. So that's also what's behind this type of program, and a big bonus.
The thing that struck me too about when you're talking about the event that you're holding in January is before you were saying that you were hesitating between public service, private, how are you going to do that? And then you say, oh, and I've organized an event where I've brought together these public institutions with all these private innovators, people, startups, and it's almost like it's an epitome of you, that event. It's all your.
But I try to bring the public and the private sector together always. And that I also believe in teamwork. So I don't think we can tackle the current challenges of climate change, of energy efficiency, of circular economy if we don't get the public and the private players on board together. Nothing's we won't be achieving the same results if this happens, in a
piecemeal and
in a separate way. We need the different players around the table, and we're talking about sustainable finance before, and we also need those who can fund these projects. And change on the ground as well, and they need to find it interesting and relevant for them. So that's also key. But that's a program a project I'm very proud of.
Yeah. So you should be. I could, Ella, I could talk to you all night, but I'm not sure our listeners would listen all night. So there's two questions I'd like to finish with. The first question is, what has your experience been of the working world as a woman? Has that ever made a difference to you?
As a woman, in what sense, maybe? Because
has it been an advantage? Has it been a disadvantage? Have there ever been times when you thought, oh, why did somebody treat me like that?
Yes, that's a key question, and an important one as well, because it's not necessarily it's not necessarily the same to be a woman leader in business. That's something to mention. I truly believe that you're either a leader or you're not. So it doesn't really have to do with whether you're a man or a woman. I think leadership, you can recognize and acknowledge leadership when you see it. I think that, and it's firstly, based on skill and what you contribute, what your added value is. I think that's the most important thing. Is and we're talking, competence needs to be at the key of any conversation there. But it's true that that there can be reactions and even maybe not necessarily said, but in between the lines, that that it is still unusual to see women leaders. I'm in a sector that is very masculine, so it's a very male dominated sector. But I think that when you as long as people recognize and understand that you're competent, there's no trouble there. So obviously there are certain situations where you can find where you can experience maybe macho reactions or certain sex-related, when I say gender-related stereotypes. But overall, I'd say when people see that you're competent, whether you're a man or a woman, it works out pretty well. So I wouldn't.
All that just falls away. All that just falls away.
Yeah, it does. But at the same time, it's true that we're underrepresented. That's a fact. So and we'd need more women leaders, definitely, just because society is we represent over 50% of society. So if women aren't represented at leadership positions, that's a shame. In the sense that we're not a minority.
We're not
a minority, and that's something that does annoy me a tiny bit, because in certain conversations where women professionals, whether we're talking about career trajectories or leadership positions, it's often often brought into the conversation as if we're talking about a minority topic, but we're not talking about the majority. So, so that's something to bear in mind, I think. but competence and skill is key.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at a hire within my team, the first thing, am I looking at someone who can bring something to my team? What's the added value that this person can bring? What are the skills? And that trumps the rest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It should trump the rest.
And it should trump the rest. Absolutely.
So that's, that's the first thing to have in mind. And then of course, it's good to have a diversity within your team. People from different ages, but it's also, there's gender diversity, but there's also age. People don't talk. We don't talk enough about intergenerational diversity at work. And depending on the organisation, there might be a bias towards younger employees or a bias towards more senior employees. So, and you need to find the right mix there to ensure that your business stays on top, whether you're a big organisation or a smaller company. So I think that's important as well.
And the last question I like to ask is, do you have a particular message that you'd like to leave with the people who are listening?
Yes. Well, I maybe as a conclusion, I mean, I have three verbs that basically determine everything we do at Green Soluce, and which are at the core of the company's DNA. The first verb is to dare. I think today in business and in my field, but more generally for any economic sector, the world's so complex and things are moving so fast that we need new approaches. We need to dare to go different ways. We need to dare to put different types of people around the table. We need to try different things if we don't want to stay stuck in the 20th century. The 21st century has needs 21st century solutions. So, that basically means more audacity and, to dare new ways of thinking and new ways of taking action. So that's the first verb. The second verb at the core of Green Soluce is, to do, actually carrying out those solutions. So it's not just talking about them or communicating about them. It's actually, carrying them out on the ground, in the field, talking concretely about what we're trying to do positively. And sustainability can also sometimes be considered, as fluff. CSR, sustainability, but what does that mean exactly? And so, actually carrying out the projects and showing by, demonstrating by example. So that's the second verb. And then the third verb that we that irrigates everything that we do, my team and I, is to lead. So once you've dared, once you've done, you try and lead the way for others to follow, and for clients to be convinced, for clients to want to dare again, and then do more and continue with leadership. So those three verbs are, I think, pretty relevant for today in society and more generally in the economy.
Well, thank you, Ella. I mean, as I said before, there's so much more I could ask you, and I hope that we do have the chance to speak again, and that we can dig down further. But what I'm left with is, first of all, with Green Soluce, that it's a company that is actually there on the ground doing sustainability and in the nitty-gritty of it, and in the hard, difficult things, actually doing what needs to be done. And I think that is just so important. And the other thing I'm left with is just that it was a privilege for me to spend this time getting to know you and to hear about the sort of person that you are, the courage that you've got, the fact that you have the grit, that you go in there every single day, and that you love it. And I think that is a huge example for I hope, for the women who are listening to this, the women and men and whoever.
And men,
everybody
exactly,
who is listening to this, whoever. I think it's a huge example for all of us. So thank you very much for spending the time with me. It's been a privilege for me.
Thanks, Cecilia. Thanks for having me. No, it was great. It was great to share a bit of what we're trying to do at Green Soluce. Yep. Thank you very much.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Brave New Women. On Friday, 22 January, I'll be holding a free webinar to talk about how women can stand up and speak up. There'll be 2 sessions, 8:30 a.m. in Paris, which is 6:30 p.m. in Sydney, and then the second session at 2:30 p.m. Paris, which is 8:30 a.m. on the US East Coast. If you'd like to join us, please connect on LinkedIn or on the Brave New Women Facebook page. Thanks so much for listening.